The city of Liege never realized how famous it would be as a result of its waffles. Like Liege, its waffle has a long history, but we'll start around 1820, when chef of the Prince Bishop of Liege used a brioche dough with pearl sugar to create the Liege waffle. Years later, the Liege waffle is still being made with pearl sugar and enjoyed in Belgium, and now in the US. As a waffeleur, you must go through the passage to learn Belgium's well-kept secret about baking the Liege waffles. It is up to you to find your way through this passage and restore the waffles to their intended status. We mix our own dough weekly in New York, and it's important to understand how ordinary ingredients work together. Yeast, flour, milk, lots of butter, and of course, pearl sugar. The first secret is that, unlike other Belgian waffles, the Liege waffle is made from dough, not batter. Yeast plays a very key role. Once it's activated, great things happen, but other things have to happen first. Let's talk about storing and proofing. When the dough is made, it's portioned into hockey puck-sized patties and frozen. At this temperature, the yeast is dormant. Then the dough is put into the refrigerator to thaw, which takes 8 to 12 hours. The yeast isn't really activated until we take it out of the refrigerator to proof or rise. Dough is proofed in the ambient air or in the proofer, depending on the air temperature. Study the slides, since this is crucial to your mission. Obviously, air temperature will influence the time it takes for the dough to rise. The proofer forces the dough to rise faster, which is good to know if you're in a hurry. Become familiar with the times to proof listed on this slide as preparation for your first test. You're not yet ready to move past this section of the passage. Go back and try again. Congratulations! You've made it through the first level. If your mission requires that you proof dough fast, or if it's cold outside, use the proofer. Set it on 90 degrees and keep the humidity on medium. Humidity is generated from a heated water pan. Check to make sure the water is 1.5 inches before starting each shift. Take a minute to look at the control settings. Caution: setting the temperature or humidity higher won't speed things up, and if the temperature is too high, over 110 degrees, the yeast will start dying. Patties will melt. The mission will fail. If the humidity is too high, the dough will proof, but will be too moist to bake properly. So here is what actually happens. The yeast feeds on the sugars in the dough and produces air bubbles, making the dough rise 3 times its original size. This process also strengthens the dough and breaks down the larger molecules into smaller ones, creating an incredible flavor and aroma. Your mission depends on these reactions, so never bake unproofed or underproofed dough. Dough should proof until it has a muffin shape, and all the space between the muffins disappear. Once dough is proofed, you have a window to bake the waffles, around an hour and 15 minutes. If you need them, bake them all right away. If not, spread it out so you always have that incredible smell emanating from your space. If it's proofed for too long, the dough will start spilling over the sides and start to become slightly rancid. At this point, the dough loses its firmness and becomes gloppy. Avoid overproofing dough. Once dough is proofed, it must be baked that day. It just won't keep. Better to bake the dough than overproof it. Dough can't be put back into the refrigerator or freezer. However, baked waffles will keep. Wow! You've passed another level. Keep up the momentum. Study this equipment, waffeleur. This is your most important tool. Before baking the waffle on the iron, turn the waffle iron to 1. A red or orange light will turn on. Then set the temperature gauge to 180 degrees centigrade. That temperature is just right. That's hot enough to bake the waffle, but not hot enough to burn the sugar, which we'll brief you on later. If the waffle iron is cool, setting the temperature higher will not help it heat up any faster, but it may burn any sugar that is there. Don't fall prey to this thinking. Stay sharp. You're doing well. Place the patties delicately into a round form on the iron without squishing them. You want to preserve the air bubbles. Close the iron and bake. The key to this historic waffle is the color, which is more important than the time, but they should be ready in about 2.5 minutes. The color of the waffles should be golden brown with dark brown edges and have caramel spots, which are darker. Remove it with your waffle fork. When the waffle comes off the iron, it's a hot butter ball. Let them cool for at least 3 or 4 minutes. As the waffle sets, the color gets slightly darker. If you open a cooled waffle, the texture will be that of a lightly woven fabric. You're up to the 5th level. Excellent. We also make smaller waffles, or waffleinis. And in this case, less is more. We need 1/3 the amount of dough, and the baking time is 2 minutes. Sugar will build up on the iron, or drip off. Clean the drips from around the iron, and flip the waffle iron every 8 waffles or so. Use gravity to distribute the excess sugar around the waffle. Hot sugar has 3 stages: brown, boiling, and burnt. Watch the sugar on the iron. If it starts bubbling, the iron needs to be cooler. If it burns, it will turn black. Scrape the sugar off of the iron before baking again. When you're baking waffles, and you realize that this is the last batch for a while, turn the iron down to 150 degrees after you've started baking. The waffles will bake, but when they come off, the iron will be cool enough not to burn the sugar. Liege waffles and waffleinis can be reheated and come out tasting perfect. Put the waffle on the iron. Be sure to line up the grid on the waffle with the iron. Close the iron and reheat for 45 seconds for a full Liege waffle, shorter for young kids. Waffleinis need 30 seconds to reheat. Congratulations! You've passed the 8th level. You're almost there. We always try to give our customers waffles that are as fresh as possible, just not right off the iron. That being said, sometimes you have to plan for peak demand. Take a minute to become familiar with this screen. If you know ahead of time you will be busy, start to bake a little earlier. Take into account the number of waffles you will need, the number you have, and proofing time. You want to be ready for those hungry customers. Except for extremely slow periods or closing time, it's good to have at least one sleeve of dough proofing. If your shift will be followed by someone else, it's good to leave them with at least 20 baked waffles and at least one sleeve proofing. If you are working the closing shift, keep in mind the earlier shift will have to proof the dough before baking it. It is your responsibility to leave at least 10 to 20 pre-baked waffles for the start of the next shift. Congratulations, Waffler! You've saved the secret of the Liege waffles.